Hey, it's Echo. Welcome back to Echocraft. If you're new here or if you enjoy my content, I would really appreciate a like and subscribe. Tonight's stories are about heartbreak, betrayal, and the kind of secret that unravels a relationship from the inside out. It's those stories that start quietly, like any other, but end in a way that no one could have predicted. So settle in. Let the world slow down around you and listen. Story 1. I went through his phone and couldn't believe what I saw. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who would go through someone's phone. But when you live with a feeling that something's off, it doesn't let you sleep. My ex, let's call him Ryan, and I had been together for 3 years. We met at a mutual friend's birthday dinner, one of those nights where you sit next to someone by chance and end up talking until the restaurant closes. He was charming in a way that didn't feel forced. He made everyone laugh, paid attention to small things, and when he looked at you, it felt like he saw you completely. We fell hard and fast. He was a graphic designer, creative and spontaneous, while I worked in marketing, more structured, more planned. We balanced each other, or at least that's what I told myself for a long time. In the beginning, everything was cinematic. Coffee dates that lasted hours, weekend trips, soft arguments about which show to watch next, kisses in the kitchen that made the world stop for a second. But somewhere around the 2-year mark, things started to shift. I couldn't explain it, but there was a new distance. His phone was always upside down on the table. He'd get texts late at night and step into another room to answer them. When I asked, he'd smile and say, "It's just work." He worked freelance, so there were always clients, deadlines, excuses. But I knew. There's a certain silence people give off when they're lying. Not in words, but in presence. One night, he came home smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. Not obvious, not dramatic, just faint, like the ghost of someone else's skin. I remember hugging him and feeling his whole body tense for half a second before he relaxed. That half second was all I needed. I didn't ask anything, I just started watching. He changed his lock screen. He started showering right when he got home. He kept his laptop closed more often, and the more I noticed, the quieter I became. It's strange how when you start to lose trust, you also lose your voice. I told myself I was overthinking. I tried to be patient. But then came the night that broke everything open. He fell asleep on the couch after drinking with some friends. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. The screen lit up with a message from someone saved only as just one word, "Miss you." I stared at it until my pulse drowned out the sound of the TV. I picked up his phone, my hands shaking, and opened the message. It wasn't just one conversation. It was months, pages and pages of texts, photos, voice notes, plans, confessions. I read everything. It wasn't just cheating. It was intimacy. He'd told her things he'd never told me. He'd said he was miserable, that I didn't get him anymore, that I was controlling, that he stayed with me out of guilt. He'd even written, "I wish I could tell her it's over." I don't know how long I sat there. Hours, maybe. The clock blinked 2:47 a.m. when I finally stood up. I looked at him, asleep, peaceful, and I felt something inside me snap quietly, like a thread breaking. I packed a bag, took my keys, and left. I didn't even wake him. I drove to my sister's apartment, parked outside, and cried until the sun came up. The next morning he called. Over and over. I didn't answer. When I finally did, he sounded confused, panicked. "Where are you?" he asked. I told him I knew everything. He went quiet, then sighed, like he'd been caught but wasn't surprised. He said, "I didn't mean for you to find out like that." I laughed. That dry, bitter kind of laugh that doesn't sound like humour at all. He tried to explain, saying it just happened, that he never stopped loving me, that Elle was a mistake. But people don't send voice notes saying "I wish you were here" instead of her if it's just a mistake. I told him I was done. He cried then, and for a moment I almost softened, because it's easy to forget when you're angry that the person who hurt you is still someone you love. Weeks passed. He sent emails, texts, letters. He left flowers at my door. He showed up at my work once, apologising in the rain like some movie cliché. But real life doesn't edit itself for forgiveness. Every time I saw him, I saw the message, "Miss you." Eventually I blocked his number, deleted everything and tried to move on. But healing wasn't a straight line. It came in waves. Some days I was fine. Other days I missed him so much it felt physical. Like a bruise I kept pressing just to see if it still hurt. Then, 3 months later, I got a message from Elle. She'd found me on Instagram. It started with, "You don't know me, but I think we should talk." My hands went cold. She said she'd broken things off with him, that she found out he'd lied to her too, that he told her we'd been broken up for months when we hadn't. She said she was sorry, that she didn't know, that she thought he was single. I wanted to hate her, but instead, I just felt empty. Because it hit me that we were both victims of the same man. Different stories, same pain. She told me she'd caught him messaging someone else already. Another client. I didn't respond for a while. Then I wrote back, "He lies to everyone. Don't let him lie to you again." She thanked me, and that was it. I never heard from her again. Now, almost a year later, I sometimes wonder if he ever thinks about what he lost. Not me specifically, but the version of himself that was still good before all the lies. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's found someone new to charm, to lie to start over with. But I've learned that some people never apologize the right way. They just disappear and call that growth. I used to think closure was something they gave you. I've learned it's something you give yourself. I don't need his regret. I don't need his explanations. I just need to know that I left when love turned into performance. Sometimes I still think about the way he looked that first night we met. The warmth, the easy smile. But now, when I do, I remind myself that what looks like light can also burn. And that's okay. Because even though he left a scar, I still survived. And one day, that's all that will matter. And that's the end of this story. Heartbreak can be messy, cruel, and even scandalous, but it also makes space for new beginnings. If you're listening to this while healing, know that you're not alone. You will move forward, slowly, quietly, but surely. Story 2. I found out the man I loved was married, and I was the affair. I used to think I was a good judge of character. I really did. I thought I could tell when someone was being genuine, when their words matched their intentions. That belief shattered the day I found out the man I loved had a wife. I met him at a coffee shop, of all places, cliché I know. He was sitting alone, reading something on his laptop, and I remember thinking how calm he looked. Everyone else was rushing, but he seemed perfectly still, like time didn't touch him. I ordered my drink, sat near him, and after a few minutes he asked me what I was reading. That's how it started. A simple question. I told him it was a novel, something about love and timing, and he said he believed timing was everything. I didn't know it then, but that line would haunt me later. We started seeing each other often, first at that same cafe, then dinners, then weekends. His name was Michael. He was in his late 30s, quiet but confident. The kind of man who made you feel safe when he spoke. I was 26, single, not looking for anything serious at first, but the way he looked at me made me feel seen in a way I hadn't in years. He said all the right things, but not in a rehearsed way. It felt real. He said I was different, that I made him feel alive again, that he'd never connected with anyone like this before. I believed him because I wanted to. He told me he worked long hours, sometimes late nights, and I didn't question it. He always texted good morning and good night. He always called when he could. He was consistent, thoughtful, romantic in quiet ways, sending songs that reminded him of me, writing little notes. I fell for him fast. It wasn't some whirlwind of passion. It was slower, deeper, like roots growing under the surface. But every love story built on lies has cracks. You just don't see them at first. The first red flag was his phone. He always had it on silent. He'd flip it over when we were together. He said he hated notifications. Once, when it buzzed during dinner, I saw a name I didn't recognize. T. He said it was a co-worker, and I believed him. The second red flag was how he never stayed the night. He'd always leave before midnight, even on weekends. When I asked why, he said he had the early mornings. I wanted to trust him. I really did. But sometimes he'd smell faintly of a perfume that wasn't mine. I told myself it was nothing. I didn't want to be the jealous girlfriend. After 6 months, I told him I loved him. He looked at me for a long moment, then kissed me and said, "I love you too." It was soft, sincere, and I thought it meant everything. It didn't. One night, he told me he couldn't see me that weekend. He said he was travelling for work, but on Sunday afternoon, I went to the grocery store near his office, and I saw him. With her. A woman about his age with a wedding ring that caught the sunlight. They were laughing, holding hands, pushing a cart together. and when she leaned in to kiss him on the cheek, he didn't pull away. It's strange how your body reacts before your brain catches up. My hands went numb. My heart started pounding so loud I thought people could hear it. I walked out of the store without buying anything, sat in my car, and stared at nothing for what felt like hours. My mind replayed every moment, every late-night call, every missed weekend, every lie disguised as tenderness. I didn't confront him right away. I wanted to understand first, so I did something I'd never done before. I looked him up. His last name, the company he said he worked for, and there it was. A company profile with a photo of him and a bio that said married father of 2. My stomach dropped. I clicked through, and there she was again, his wife, his real wife, smiling in family photos with 2 small children. A perfect little life. I texted him that night, just one word. Why? He called immediately. He didn't deny it. He didn't even sound surprised. He said he wanted to tell me that it had gotten complicated, that he didn't mean to hurt me. He said he and his wife weren't really together, that they were basically separated. But when I asked if she knew that, he went silent. That silence told me everything. He begged me not to say anything, said he needed time to figure things out. I told him I wasn't waiting. He said, "You don't understand. It's not what it looks like." But the thing about lies is, they always look exactly like the truth until the moment they don't. I hung up. I blocked his number, and then, for weeks, I spiraled. Because it wasn't just heartbreak, it was shame. I'd become what I swore I'd never be. The other woman. Even though I didn't know, it didn't matter. I still was. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw the reflection of someone who'd been used to fill the spaces between another person's real life. I hated him, but I also hated myself for not seeing it. A month later, his wife messaged me. I don't know how she found me, but she said, "I know who you are." I froze. She wasn't angry, not in the way I expected. She said, "You don't owe me anything. I just want to know how long it's been going on." I told her the truth. 6 months. I told her I didn't know he was married, that he'd lied to both of us. She thanked me. She said, "You're the only one who's been honest with me." That sentence hurt more than anything he ever said. Later I found out she left him. He tried to reach out again, but I never responded. Some nights I still think about him. Not because I miss him, but because I miss the version of him I thought I knew, the version that never existed. Love built on secrets always collapses. Maybe not right away, but eventually the truth always catches up. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever trust anyone again. But then I remember it wasn't love that hurt me. It was a lie pretending to be love, and I can live with that. Story 3. I cheated on my fiancé and ended up destroying the only person who ever truly loved me. I never planned to cheat. Nobody ever really does, not in the beginning. It starts small, little cracks, quiet disconnections, moments that don't feel like anything at the time. And then, one day, you realise you've crossed a line you can't uncross. I met Hannah when I was 27. She was the kind of woman people wrote songs about. Beautiful, but not in a loud way. She had the kind of beauty you notice slowly, the kind that came from the way she laughed with her whole body or how she listened like every word mattered. I knew I wanted to marry her after the 3rd date. She was gentle, loyal, and made me want to be better. We moved in together after a year, got engaged after 2, and by the time I was 30, my life felt set. The kind of calm, steady love I'd always envied in other people. We had routines, shared playlists, weekend rituals. We were partners in every way that mattered. And then came Mara. She was new at the firm, confident, clever, a little chaotic. She reminded me of everything I used to be before I settled down. She'd stroll into meetings late, coffee in one hand, charm in the other, and somehow everyone forgave her for it. At first it was harmless. We got along. We worked on the same projects. We joked about clients, about office politics, about how burnt out we were. She flirted lightly, but she flirted with everyone, and I didn't think much of it. Until the night we stayed late finishing a presentation and she said, "You're lucky, you know. Hannah seems like the kind of person who never stops caring." I don't know why that hit me the way it did. Maybe because I'd been taking Hannah for granted. Maybe because hearing someone else say her name reminded me how long it had been since she'd looked at me the same way. I shrugged it off, made a joke, and we kept working. But something shifted. Suddenly I was more aware of Mara, her perfume, her laughter, the way she'd touch my arm when she talked. I told myself it was harmless. Everyone notices people. It doesn't mean anything. Then came the business trip. 3 days out of state, same hotel, late nights prepping for the pitch. The first night we had dinner with the team, but the second night it was just us. 1 drink turned into 3. We talked about everything. Our childhoods, our regrets, the way life never quite turns out how you picture it. She said, "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's idea of happiness?" I should have stopped it there. I should have gone back to my room. Instead I said, "All the time." We kissed outside the bar. It wasn't dramatic. No music, no fireworks. Just a quiet, desperate kind of kiss that felt like falling asleep in the wrong bed. I pulled away first. I said, "This can't happen." She said, "Then don't let it." But the next night it happened anyway. When I came home, Hannah hugged me at the door. She'd made dinner, lit candles, asked about the trip. I told her it went great. I looked her in the eyes and lied through my teeth. That was the worst part. It wasn't the cheating itself, it was how easily I slipped back into pretending. I told myself it was a one-time mistake. It wasn't. Mara and I kept seeing each other, always in secret, always at odd hours. It wasn't about love, it was about escape. She made me feel exciting again, like I hadn't settled into the quiet rhythms of adulthood. But every time I came home to Hannah, guilt followed me like a shadow. I started overcompensating. Flowers for no reason, spontaneous dates, long apologies for small arguments. She thought I was just being sweet. She didn't know I was trying to bury a lie under affection. And then one night while I was in the shower, my phone buzzed on the counter. Hannah picked it up. I heard the silence before I saw her face. She was holding the phone, her eyes red, her hands shaking. Mara's name on the screen. A text that read, "I can still taste you." I tried to speak, but she just said, "Don't." Her voice wasn't angry, it was empty, like something inside her had already broken. She packed a bag that night. I followed her to the door, begging, apologizing, saying every meaningless thing people say when they realize they've ruined everything. She looked at me and said, "You were my home," and then she left. The days after blurred together. Friends took sides. Her family blocked me. Our apartment felt haunted, full of echoes of laughter that didn't belong to me anymore. Mara tried to reach out, but I couldn't look at her without seeing the wreckage of what we'd done. I ended it, but it didn't make anything better. Months passed. I tried therapy. I tried running. I tried pretending I was okay. But guilt has a way of sitting quietly in the corners of your life. It shows up in empty rooms, in songs you skip, in the way you avoid your own reflection. Hannah moved out of state eventually. I heard through a mutual friend that she met someone new, someone kind, someone honest. I hope he never gives her a reason to question him. People ask if I regret it. Of course I do. But regret doesn't fix anything. It's just a reminder that I had something good and chose to destroy it. I've dated since then, but it's never the same. I can't love the way I used to. Not because I don't want to, but because I don't trust myself to be the man someone believes I am. I became the villain in my own story, and the worst part is, I earned it. Sometimes, late at night, I still scroll through old photos of us, vacations, birthdays, small moments that used to mean everything. I look at her smile and realize she's smiling at someone who doesn't exist anymore. The version of me she loved died the moment I crossed that line. I've tried to forgive myself, but maybe some mistakes aren't meant to be forgiven. Maybe they're just meant to remind you what it costs to be careless with someone's heart. If I could tell her one thing now, it would be that she was right. I was her home once, and now I'm just someone who burned it down. Story 4. I ended my engagement the night before the wedding because I found out the truth about him. I still remember the smell of the flowers that morning, the faint sweetness of lilies and roses mixing with perfume and hairspray and nervous laughter. Everyone was happy, buzzing around me, my bridesmaids taking photos, my mom adjusting my veil, my friends teasing me about the last day of freedom. I smiled for the pictures, I said the right things, I thanked everyone for coming, but inside, I already knew. Something was wrong. I just didn't know how wrong until it was too late. His name was Ethan. We'd been together for 5 years, engaged for 1, and I'd convinced myself he was my forever. He was smart, dependable, funny in a quiet way. He made me feel safe, which was something I'd never had before. I'd dated men who were unpredictable, impulsive, but Ethan was steady. Predictability felt like peace, and maybe that's why I ignored the little things, the late nights, the locked phone, the way his expression would change when I asked simple questions like where he'd been. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself he loved me because he said it all the time. He said it so easily that I forgot to wonder what love should actually look like. The night before the wedding, we stayed at separate hotels. Tradition, my mum said. You'll miss him tonight, she laughed. I smiled, but I didn't. Something in me had gone quiet. Around midnight, I got a text from one of my bridesmaids, Sophie. She asked if I was awake. I said yes. She called me immediately, whispering. I didn't know if I should tell you, she said, but I can't let you marry him without knowing. My heart stopped. She sent me screenshots, messages from Ethan to another woman. Explicit, intimate, months of them. His contact name hidden under initials, but the texts weren't ambiguous. There were dates, times, hotel names. He'd been seeing her the entire time we'd been engaged. I remember the way my hands trembled as I scrolled. I wanted to believe it was fake. I wanted to believe it was some cruel joke. But when I saw the photo of him in the same shirt he'd worn on his guy's night, I knew. I sat on the floor of my hotel room in my pyjamas, surrounded by half-packed bags and wedding decorations, and cried until my throat hurt. Then something inside me went very still. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It was clarity. I called him. He didn't answer. I called again, and again, until he finally picked up, his voice groggy. Babe, it's late, he said. I asked him who Nadia was. Silence. He stammered, tried to deny it, but when I told him I had proof, he just sighed. Not sorry, not panicked, just tired. He said it didn't mean anything. I asked him how long. He said almost a year. I asked him if he loved her. He said, no, I love you. And that's what broke me. The way he said it, calm, practiced, like lying had become second nature. I hung up. I didn't scream, I didn't beg, I didn't even cry again. I just sat there, realizing the man I was supposed to marry the next day had spent the past year building a life on a lie. Around 3 a.m, I called my mum. I told her it was off. She thought I was nervous. She told me to get some sleep. I said, no, Mum. It's over. She drove over in her robe, thinking I'd lost my mind. When I showed her the messages, she didn't say anything for a long time. Then she hugged me and said, you're doing the right thing. By sunrise, the vendors had been called, the guests notified. My phone buzzed non-stop. Friends, relatives, people asking if it was a joke. Ethan tried to call. I didn't answer. He showed up at the hotel around noon, eyes red, begging to talk. He said it was a mistake, that it was meaningless, that I was everything to him. I told him he didn't get to decide what was meaningless. He cried, and I didn't. I felt empty, like someone had scooped out everything inside me. He said he still wanted to get married, that we could fix it. I asked him, would you have told me if I hadn't found out? He didn't answer. That was my answer. We cancelled the wedding. My family helped pack everything up. I sent out a short message to the guests. The wedding has been called off. Please respect our privacy. That night, when the sun went down, I sat on the edge of the hotel bed in my wedding dress. I tried it on one last time, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to remember what almost happened. I looked at myself in the mirror, at the woman who almost married a lie, and I whispered, you got out. The weeks after were strange. People treated me like I was fragile, like I'd barely escaped a fire. Maybe I had. Friends told me I was brave, but I didn't feel brave. I felt humiliated. The venue wouldn't refund the deposit. The honeymoon was non-refundable. Every email confirmation felt like a bruise I couldn't stop touching. I moved out of the apartment we shared, changed my number, and started therapy. The first session, the therapist asked me, what do you want to feel? And I said, peace. Months passed. Ethan tried to contact me a few times. Letters, emails, long confessions that all sounded like the same script. He said he missed me, that he couldn't sleep, that he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. Maybe he had. But every time I thought about answering, I remembered the calm in his voice when I confronted him. The way he didn't fight to tell the truth until he got caught. I don't think cheaters regret the act, they regret the exposure. It's been a year now. I'm not angry anymore. anger burned itself out and left something quieter behind. I've learned that love isn't supposed to make you doubt your own reality. It's not supposed to keep you guessing. It's not supposed to depend on someone's phone being face down. I still wear the engagement ring sometimes, not as jewellery, but as a reminder of what I survived. People always say heartbreak teaches you something, but I think betrayal teaches you more, about trust, about intuition, about how silence can be an answer. Sometimes, when I walk past bridal shops or see wedding photos online, I still feel a little ache. Not because I miss him, but because I miss who I was before I knew what he was capable of. I miss the version of myself who believed that love could protect her from anything. But that's gone now, replaced by something stronger, quieter, truer. And maybe that's enough. Because the truth is, I didn't lose my happily ever after. I found out what it really meant. Story 5. I found out my boyfriend was living a double life, and I was the other one. I always thought I understood heartbreak. I'd been through breakups before, arguments, even betrayal in small doses, but nothing could have prepared me for the kind of slow, suffocating realization that someone you love has been living a completely different life right under your nose. When I met Caleb, I wasn't looking for anything serious. I'd just gotten out of a 2-year relationship and told myself I needed time to figure out who I was without someone else attached to me. He changed that. He wasn't the type I usually went for, quiet, reserved, thoughtful in a way that felt rare. We met at a friend's birthday party, both trying to escape the noise. He was standing on the balcony drinking a beer, staring out at the city lights. I remember him saying, "Doesn't it feel weird how everyone's pretending they're having fun?" And I laughed because it was exactly what I'd been thinking. That's how it started, with a shared joke about pretending. It's funny now how fitting that was. We started seeing each other casually, coffee dates, long drives, nights at my apartment where we'd order takeout and talk until the sky started turning pale. There was something about him that drew me in. Not passion, not even excitement, but this calm I hadn't felt before. He didn't ask for anything from me, didn't push, didn't rush. He'd just show up with a smile and a story about his day. He told me he worked in real estate, that his schedule was unpredictable, that sometimes he'd have to cancel last minute. It didn't bother me. I liked my space. I liked that we didn't have to be in constant contact to feel close. At least that's what I told myself. After a few months, things started to shift. He was around more. He started leaving little things at my place. A toothbrush, a hoodie, a book he'd been reading. He'd cook dinner for me after work, fall asleep next to me, wake up early and make coffee before I even opened my eyes. It felt like a life forming in real time. I remember thinking, this is what it's supposed to feel like. Not fireworks, not obsession, just quiet certainty. We never argued. We laughed constantly. He met my friends and they loved him. My mum adored him. He was perfect in that way that almost felt suspicious. But every time I had doubts, he'd do something so thoughtful that I'd scold myself for being paranoid. Around the 9-month mark, he started acting different. Not distant exactly, but careful. His phone was always on silent. He started keeping it face down. He said it was because of work, because clients would call late, because he didn't want business ruining our nights. He was still affectionate, still sweet, but there was something under the surface, a hesitation, a flicker in his eyes when I said, "I love you." I told myself it was stress. Real estate is hard. He was tired. I didn't want to be the clingy girlfriend. Then, one Sunday, everything started unravelling. He told me he was driving out of town for a showing, some property 2 hours away. I had no reason not to believe him. But around noon, I went to the grocery store near my apartment, and there he was, standing in the parking lot, holding hands with a woman. She was laughing, looking up at him the way I used to. I froze. My first thought was that it couldn't be him. Maybe it was someone who looked like him, someone with the same walk, the same smile. But then he turned, and our eyes met. He froze too. The colour drained from his face. The woman looked between us, confused, and said, "Who's that?" He didn't answer. I walked up to them, shaking, my voice breaking as I said, "That's what I'd like to know." I didn't make a scene. I didn't yell. I just stood there while he stammered something about it not being what it looked like. The woman looked at him and said, "Caleb, what is she talking about?" That was the first time I ever heard her say his name. My name for him. like it belonged to her too. He didn't follow me when I left. He didn't even try. He called an hour later. I didn't answer. He called again and again until I finally picked up, my hands trembling so badly I almost dropped the phone. He said he could explain. He said it wasn't what I thought. He said he was sorry. I asked him, "How long?" He said, "A while." I asked him, "Who is she?" And he said, "My girlfriend." I laughed then, an ugly, bitter sound that didn't even feel like it belonged to me. "You're what?" I asked. He said, "It's complicated." It wasn't complicated. He'd been living a double life. 2 relationships, 2 women, 2 worlds that he thought would never collide. I was the other one, though I didn't know it. I hung up on him, blocked his number, and sat in my apartment staring at the wall for hours. Everything around me, the things he'd touched, the clothes he'd left, the mug he always used, felt like evidence. I started bagging them up one by one, until the only trace of him left was the smell of his cologne on my pillow. I threw that out too. A week passed before I got the message. From her, the woman from the parking lot. She found me on Instagram. Her message was short. "I think we need to talk." My first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity, or maybe anger, got the better of me, I wrote back. We met at a cafe. When I walked in, she was already there, sitting by the window, her hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched. She looked at me and said, "You didn't know either, did you?" I shook my head. She told me they'd been together for almost 3 years. 3 years. My stomach twisted. She said she'd suspected something for months but never had proof, until she saw the way he looked at me in that parking lot. She said, "I knew then." We compared timelines. While he was with me on weekends, he was with her during the week. When he said he had work trips, he was with her family. He'd built 2 lives like parallel lines, running side by side but never touching. We even laughed a little, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. She said she'd ended it that night. I told her I had too. We sat there for almost 2 hours, talking about the same man like we were survivors of the same storm. Later, I learned that she'd confronted him one last time. He told her he loved her. He told me the same thing a week later in a long, rambling email. He said he'd never meant to hurt anyone, that he'd fallen in love with both of us and didn't know how to choose. He said he was going to therapy, that he was trying to understand himself. I deleted it without replying, because no apology fixes a lie that big. No amount of "I love you" can unmake the fact that he was building happiness out of deception. Months passed. I started seeing a therapist, not because I missed him, but because I didn't trust myself anymore. I didn't trust my own judgment. How do you go back to believing in love after realizing you were living in someone else's story? Every memory became suspect. Every laugh, every kiss, every "I miss you." I replayed them all, wondering what version of him I was seeing in each one. Was he thinking about her while he was with me? Did he text her after leaving my bed? Did he ever mean any of it? Healing wasn't linear. Some days I felt free. Other days I felt hollow. My friends told me I dodged a bullet, but it didn't feel that way. It felt like someone had rewritten the last year of my life in invisible ink. Eventually the ache dulled. The shame faded. I started going out again, started smiling without forcing it. One night, I walked past that same cafe where we met, and for the first time, I didn't think of him. I thought of myself, the version of me that still believed people were who they said they were. I missed her, but I also knew she'd grown into someone stronger. Sometimes, late at night, I still wonder if he thinks about either of us, if he misses the thrill of keeping 2 worlds spinning. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But the truth doesn't belong to him anymore. It belongs to us, the women who found out, who compared stories, who walked away. We were both the other one, but now we're neither. And maybe that's the real ending, not revenge, not closure, just freedom. Story 6. He said he was single, until his wife messaged me. I used to think I could read people. I thought I could tell when someone was being honest, when a story didn't line up, when something felt off. I prided myself on it, actually. I'd seen enough, been through enough, dated enough liars to think I could spot one before they got close. But I was wrong. I met Liam at a concert, one of those open-air summer nights where everything feels a little too good to be real. It wasn't planned. My friend bailed last minute, and I almost didn't go. But then he was there, standing behind me in line for drinks, tall, smiling, with that easy kind of confidence that makes you drop your guard without realising it. We started talking before the show even started. He made fun of my drink choice. I made fun of his. He told me he was from out of town, that he'd just moved here for work. We watched the show together, and when the music ended, he asked if I wanted to grab food. It was late, I was tired, but something about the night felt cinematic. The city lights, the energy, the way the air hummed. I said yes. We talked for hours at some greasy diner, laughing like we'd known each other for years. He told me he'd been single for about a year, that his last relationship had ended badly but amicably. He asked about me, about what I did, what I wanted. He listened. Really listened. The way people do when they actually care. By the end of the night, I didn't want him to go. He kissed me in the parking lot, gentle but certain, and it felt like the start of something. He got my number, and by the time I got home, he'd already texted, "Tonight was amazing. I want to see you again." The next few months were a blur of good things. Dinners, walks, weekend trips. He was thoughtful in ways that felt genuine. Small notes left on my counter, playlist he made for me, random texts in the middle of the day saying he missed me. He told me about his job in tech, how demanding it was, but how worth it felt now that he had someone to come home to. We weren't official, not at first, but it felt like we were heading that way. He'd say things like, "I don't usually open up like this," or "I haven't felt this close to anyone in years." It felt safe, solid, it felt real. There were little inconsistencies though. Nights where he'd suddenly lose service. Times he'd cancel plans last minute because something came up. He never let me post him online. Said he was private, didn't like social media. I didn't push it. I told myself that meant he was mature, grounded. He'd stay at my place sometimes but never left anything behind. No toothbrush, no clothes, nothing. I asked once, jokingly, "Why don't you just leave a shirt here or something?" He smiled and said, "I'd rather have an excuse to keep coming back." I thought that was romantic. It wasn't. One weekend he told me he had to go back home to visit family. He was vague about where home was, but I didn't pry. We texted all weekend. He sent photos, sunsets, hotel rooms, random meals. Monday night, he said he missed me and couldn't wait to see me. Everything seemed fine, until Tuesday morning when I woke up to a message request on Instagram from someone I didn't know. Her profile picture was a woman holding a toddler. Her message was simple. "Hi, I think we need to talk about Liam." I stared at it for a long time. My first thought was that it was spam or some ex trying to start drama. I clicked on her profile. There were photos of her and Liam, not old ones either. Recent, family photos, trips, birthday parties. I felt my chest tighten. I responded, "Who are you?" She said, "His wife." Everything went quiet after that. I remember reading the words over and over, my mind trying to reject them. She said they'd been married for 6 years, that they had a 3-year-old son, that she found my name in his recent messages on his iPad, which synced to his account without him realising. She said she wasn't angry at me. She just wanted to know how long it had been going on. I told her the truth. 6 months. She sent a message back that I'll never forget. He told me he was working late. Every time. We talked for almost an hour. She was calm. Heartbreakingly calm. She said he'd done this before, that she'd forgiven him once, that she'd believed he'd changed. I could hear the exhaustion in her voice, the kind of tired that comes from holding a life together while someone else keeps tearing it apart. She told me she wasn't surprised, just disappointed. When we hung up, she said, "I'm sorry he hurt you too." That sentence broke me. He called me that night, over and over. I didn't answer. I didn't want to hear whatever story he'd cooked up, but eventually I picked up because I needed to hear him lie one more time. I said, "Your wife called me." Silence. Then a soft, shaky, "Oh." I asked him how long he thought he could keep this going. He said, "I didn't mean for you to find out like this. Like this was the problem." I asked him if he loved her. He said yes. I asked him if he loved me. He said yes again. I told him that wasn't love, that whatever he was doing was just cowardice dressed up as affection. He said, "You don't understand." I said, "You're right, I don't." Because I'm not married. I hung up, blocked him. deleted every photo, every text, every trace of him from my phone, but not from my mind. That took longer. Weeks turned into months, and the betrayal sat heavy. I'd wake up some mornings and forget for a few blissful seconds before it hit me all over again. I started therapy, not because of him, but because I didn't trust myself anymore. How did I not see it? How could I have fallen for someone who was capable of that kind of double life? My therapist said something that stuck with me, that deception works because it mirrors what we hope to see. He wasn't showing me who he was showing me who I wanted him to be. A few months later, I got another message from his wife. She'd left him. She said she couldn't do it anymore. She said, "I thought about staying for our son, but I realised that staying meant teaching him what love isn't." I told her she was strong. She told me to take care of myself. That was the last time we spoke. It's been over a year now. I've dated a little since then. Carefully, slowly. I don't flinch when someone reaches for their phone anymore. I don't check for inconsistencies in every sentence. But part of me still carries the echo of that morning, that message, that realisation that the person I loved had built an entire life in which I didn't even exist. People always ask, "Didn't you see the signs?" And the truth is, no, I didn't. Because when someone's that good at pretending, the signs don't look like red flags. They look like romance. They look like late-night texts and good morning messages and quiet promises whispered between laughs. They look like love until they don't. Sometimes I still think about him, not with longing, but with disbelief. How many people had he lied to? How many versions of himself were out there? I'll never know. But I do know this. The next time someone tells me who they are, I'll believe them the first time, not the second. Because the truth doesn't hide forever. It always finds its way out, and when it does, it burns everything it touches. But sometimes, what it burns away isn't worth keeping. Story 7. I found out my girlfriend was cheating with my best friend. You always think you'd know. You think there would be signs, some obvious giveaway that something's wrong. A new perfume, late-night texts, sudden distance. You think you'd see it before it hits you. But the truth is, when you love someone, you see what you want to see. You fill in the cracks with trust. You convince yourself the strange things are just coincidences, until they're not. Her name was Elena. We'd been together for 4 years, and for most of that time I would have told anyone who asked that she was the one. We met in college. She was studying design, I was studying business. We were total opposites. She was creative, impulsive, the kind of person who made friends in seconds. I was quieter, more cautious, always thinking a few steps ahead. Somehow we fit. She said I grounded her. I said she made me feel alive. We moved in together after graduation, got a small apartment in the city, and started building the kind of life that looked perfect on the outside. Cozy nights in, weekend trips, inside jokes that lasted years. My best friend Marcus was around all the time. He'd been in my life since I was 12, practically a brother. Eleanor liked him right away. Everyone did. He was funny, easygoing, and had a way of making any room feel lighter. The three of us hung out constantly. Dinners, movie nights, game nights. It never occurred to me to be suspicious. Marcus had been through a bad breakup, and Elena always said she felt sorry for him. She'd ask if we could invite him over so he wasn't alone. I thought it was kind of her. I thought she was being a good person. It started small. Little things that didn't make sense but didn't quite seem like anything. She'd get defensive when I asked simple questions. Her phone was always face down. She started going out with friends more often, and when I'd ask who, she'd say, "You don't know them." I remember one night she came home late smelling like whiskey and someone else's cologne. I asked if she'd been out with Marcus just as a joke. She laughed too hard. I didn't know it at the time, but that was the night everything started to unravel. A few weeks later, Marcus started acting strange too. He'd cancel plans last minute, stop coming around as much. I figured he was seeing someone. I even teased him about it, and he smiled in this tight, nervous way that didn't reach his eyes. One night I asked him directly, "You seeing someone?" He hesitated, then said, "Yeah, kind of." I asked, "Anyone I know?" He said, "No, definitely not." I didn't think much of it. I wish I had. The truth came out by accident. I was cleaning one morning when I found an old camera under the couch, Marcus's. He'd left it after our last game night. I turned it on, thinking I'd text him to come get it. But when the screen lit up, the first photo nearly made me drop it. It was Elena, Not just Elena. Elena in our bedroom wearing one of my shirts, smiling in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. There were more photos, dozens, different days, different outfits, some I can't even describe. I felt sick. The world tilted sideways. I sat on the floor, scrolling, trying to make sense of it, but there was no misunderstanding it. It wasn't an old thing. The timestamps were recent, weeks old, some just days. She'd been cheating on me, with him, with my best friend. When she came home that night, I didn't say anything at first. I just watched her move around the kitchen, humming, completely unaware. Then I said, "I found Marcus's camera." The way she froze told me everything. She didn't ask what I saw. She didn't even try to deny it. She just stood there, her hands trembling, her eyes filling with tears. "I didn't mean for you to find out like that," she said. Like that was the part that mattered. I asked her how long. She said it started a few months ago. She said it just happened. I asked if she loved him. She said, "I don't know." That was somehow worse than yes. I called Marcus. He didn't answer. When he finally texted, all he said was, "I'm sorry, man." I didn't reply. I didn't trust myself to. That night I packed a bag and left. I didn't know where I was going. I just couldn't stay in that apartment, surrounded by all the ghosts of what I thought my life was. I stayed at a friend's place, barely slept, barely ate. The next morning she showed up at the door. Her eyes were swollen, makeup streaked. She begged me to talk. She said it didn't mean anything, that it was a mistake, that she didn't want to lose me. I asked her why. Why him? Why my best friend? She said, "He listened. You were always so busy. I felt lonely." I think that was the moment I stopped loving her. Because if being lonely was an excuse to betray someone, then I never stood a chance. Marcus reached out a few days later. He wanted to meet. I agreed, not because I wanted to forgive him, but because I needed to look him in the eye and hear it. When I saw him, I barely recognized him. He looked ashamed, small. He said it started the night of that whiskey smell, the night I joked about it. He said they were drunk, that it was a mistake that kept happening. I asked him if he ever thought about me while it was happening. He said, "Every time." I walked out before I did something I'd regret. For weeks, I tried to make sense of it. How the two people who knew me best could be the ones to destroy me. Friends tried to comfort me, but everything they said felt empty. "You're better off. They deserve each other. At least you found out." None of it helped, because the truth is, betrayal doesn't hurt because you lost them. It hurts because you lost you, the version of you that trusted them, the version of you that believed in them, and that version of me was gone. Months went by, she moved out, he left town. I heard they tried to make it work for a while, but it didn't last. It never does. Two people who build a relationship on guilt can't build a future on it too. I haven't spoken to either of them since. Sometimes, when I think about it, I still feel that mix of rage and heartbreak twisting in my chest. But then I remember something my sister told me when it all happened. She said, "They broke your trust, not your worth." It took me a long time to understand that. But now, when I look back, I see it clearly. Losing them wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to me. Believing they were who I thought they were, that was. Because the truth about betrayal is that it doesn't just end a relationship, it ends an illusion. And when the illusion shatters, the only thing left is who you really are. And I finally learned that who I am without them is enough. Story 8. She told me she loved me, but she was still seeing her ex the whole time. You know how people say hindsight is 20/20? I think that's only true for other people's stories. When it's your own, you don't see the red flags. You see the parts you want to believe in. You see the small, perfect moments and convince yourself they mean more than the uneasy ones. That's how I ended up falling for Harper. We met at a friend's party, the kind of house gathering where music is too loud and everyone pretends to know each other. She was sitting alone in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, looking bored out of her mind. I made some stupid joke about how it looked like she was trying to manifest an Uber driver. She laughed, not politely, genuinely. That laugh hooked me. It was real, full, unguarded. We talked for hours that night, the way people do when they think they've found someone who gets them. By the time the party was over, I'd already decided I wanted to see her again. We started texting every day, then calling, then seeing each other constantly. The connection was instant, deep, magnetic, almost too good to be true. She told me she'd just gotten out of a long relationship a few months before. I hesitated, but she assured me it was over. He's part of my past, she said. I'm done with that chapter. And she said it with such conviction that I believed her. The first few months were perfect in the way new relationships are. We stayed up until 3 a.m. talking about everything. Childhood stories, our fears, our stupidest mistakes. She'd fall asleep on my chest and I'd think, this is what love feels like. She was warm, spontaneous, full of little surprises, handwritten notes, my favourite coffee showing up at my doorstep, playlists labelled for us. I'd never felt so seen. Then, little things started to shift. She became protective of her phone. She'd turn it over when I was near. Asked about it once, casually, and she said, I just don't like distractions when I'm with you. Sweet, reasonable, until it wasn't. She started taking work calls in another room. Sometimes she'd go quiet for hours, then text, sorry, bad day. I didn't press. Everyone needs space. One weekend, we went on a trip together at a cabin in the woods she'd found online. It was beautiful. Snow outside, firelight inside. Everything felt perfect again. That night, we sat by the fire, drinking wine, and she looked at me and said, you make me feel safe. I didn't know then that she said those exact words to someone else not long before. A few days after we got back, I noticed a text pop up on her phone while it was charging. Just a name, no message. Eli. I didn't say anything right away. I didn't want to be that guy, but something about it stuck in my mind. Later I asked, hey, who's Eli? Her whole face changed for a split second before she smiled. Oh, my ex. We're cool now. We talk sometimes, but it's nothing. I told myself it was fine. People can be friends with their exes. I trusted her. I wanted to trust her. But the more I ignored that gut feeling, the louder it got. She started cancelling plans last minute, started saying she was exhausted or needed alone time. One Friday she said she was going to a girls' night. I believed her, until a friend of mine sent me a photo from across town. It was Harper, sitting in a bar, with him. At first I thought maybe it was old, a memory or something, but the timestamp said now. I felt my stomach drop. I stared at the photo until my hands went numb. Then I called her. No answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. She texted me 3 hours later. Sorry, my phone died. Just got home, I stared at those words, the lies sitting there so casually. I didn't reply, I just said, can we talk tomorrow? When she showed up the next day, she acted normal, like nothing was wrong. She kissed me, made coffee, asked if I'd slept well. I let her talk for a while before I finally said, where were you last night? She blinked. I told you, girls' night, I said. I saw the picture. Her face went pale. She didn't even try to deny it. Just sat there silent, eyes darting everywhere but mine. Finally, she said, it wasn't what it looked like. That's the thing about that phrase. It's always exactly what it looks like. She said she ran into him by chance, that they just talked, that it didn't mean anything. But I'd seen the photo, the way they were sitting, leaning into each other, her hand on his arm. You don't touch someone like that by accident. I asked her if she still had feelings for him. She started crying, didn't answer. That silence said everything. I told her I couldn't do it. She begged me to stay. She said she was confused, that she didn't know what she wanted, that I meant more to her than he did. I asked her, then why him? And she whispered, because I'm comfortable with him. Comfort. That word cut deeper than anything else. Because love isn't supposed to be about comfort. It's supposed to be about choice. And she chose the easy lie over the hard truth. I ended it that day. She cried. I didn't. I was too tired. I didn't yell or curse or demand explanations. I just said, I hope you find what you're looking for. She said, I already did. I just didn't realize I'd lose it. Weeks went by. I didn't block her. I didn't need to. She stopped reaching out eventually. Mutual friends said she went back to Eli. It lasted a few months before they broke up again. I wasn't surprised. It's been 2 years now. Sometimes I still think about her. Not in a longing way, but in a reflective one. I think about how easy it is to mistake intensity for love. How words like forever can feel so true in the moment, even when they're being shared with more than one person. I've learned that closure doesn't come when someone apologizes. It comes when you stop waiting for them to. Harper once told me that love is about timing. Maybe she was right. But I think real love is about honesty, and if you have to lie to keep it, it isn't love at all. I used to replay everything we had, trying to find the exact moment it started to fall apart. But now, I don't need to, because the moment someone starts hiding their truth, the relationship's already over. You just haven't caught up to it yet. And that brings us to the end of tonight's stories. Heartbreak comes in so many shapes. Sometimes it's quiet and drawn out, sometimes it's sharp and sudden. But no matter how it happens, it always leaves us with the choice to carry the pain or to learn from it. If you're listening to this while trying to move on, I hope these stories reminded you that you're not alone. We've all been broken, blindsided, betrayed, and still, somehow, we keep finding the strength to start over. That's the beautiful part. Healing isn't loud, it's slow, gentle, and yours alone. So take a breath. Let yourself rest tonight. You deserve peace after everything you've survived. Thank you for spending your time here with me. Until next time, this is Echo, and you've been listening to Echocraft. Sleep well and take care of your heart.